good morning, everyone. Today I stand before you with a message of hope, faith, and divine expectation. As we step into 2025, I want to remind you that God is preparing something big for you. No matter what challenges you have faced, no matter what obstacles have tried to hold you back, God is still in control and His plans for your life are greater than anything you can imagine. One of the most comforting and powerful truths in life is knowing that God has a plan for each of us. No matter where you are right now, whether you're thriving, struggling, or somewhere in between, God's plan for your life is greater than anything you could ever design for yourself. The Bible reminds us in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." This means that whatever is coming in 2025 is not just random. It is part of God's divine design for your life. You may have dreams and goals, but have you ever considered that God's dreams for you are even bigger? Sometimes we limit ourselves based on our current circumstances, past failures, or the fear of the unknown. We look at what we think is possible with our own strength, but God operates beyond human limitations. He doesn't just give us what we ask for. He gives us what He knows we need. And Isaiah 55:8 and 9 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." There may be times in 2025 when things don't seem to be going the way you expected. You may face disappointments, delays, or closed doors, but those moments are not signs of God's absence. They are proof that He is actively working behind the scenes, redirecting you towards something greater than you could ever imagine. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream from God that one day he would be in a position of leadership and influence. But before that dream came to pass, he had to endure betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. If Joseph had judged his future based on those painful moments, he might have thought that God had forgotten him. But God's plan was still in motion. In the right season, Joseph was elevated to a position of power in Egypt, and the dream God had given him was fulfilled in ways he never could have planned himself. If things don't look like they're working out, don't lose hope. If doors seem to be closing, don't give up. What may look like a setback is actually a setup for something bigger. What you thought was a rejection was actually divine protection. What you thought was a failure was actually preparation for a greater opportunity. You see, God's plans are not just about giving you success or comfort. His plans are about shaping you into the person He created you to be. Sometimes He allows us to go through difficulties because they refine our character, strengthen our faith, and prepare us to handle the blessings He is about to pour into our lives. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." This means that even when things seem uncertain, you can trust that God is working it all out for your good. So, as you step into 2025, don't settle for small thinking. Don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Start believing that God's plans for you are bigger, better, and more incredible than you can imagine. Let go of your own limited perspective and trust that He is leading you to a future filled with purpose, prosperity, and divine favor. In life, we all encounter delays, times when things don't move as quickly as we'd like, or when the doors we are knocking on seem to remain shut. It's easy to interpret delays as denials. We might think that because we haven't received what we prayed for, or because things haven't happened according to our timeline, God has forgotten us or is withholding His blessing. But I'm here to tell you that delays are not denials. In fact, they are often part of God's perfect plan to prepare us for what's ahead. Think about it. The things we ask for are often filtered through God's wisdom and timing. We are limited by what we can see, what we can understand, and what we think we're ready for. But God, in His infinite wisdom, knows exactly when the right moment is. Psalm 27:14 says, "Wait for the Lord, be strong, and take heart, and wait for the Lord." This verse is a reminder that God's timing is perfect. When He tells us to wait, it's not because He's ignoring us. It's because He's working behind the scenes in ways we cannot fully comprehend. In our fast-paced world, we often become impatient. We are used to instant gratification. We send a text and we get an immediate reply. We place an order and it arrives the next day. But God's process is different. There is an intentionality in His timing that we may not always see in the moment. Sometimes He allows us to go through delays to teach us patience, trust, and resilience. In 2025, when you face delays, remember that these moments are an opportunity for growth. Delays also give us a chance to refine our desires. You might think you know exactly what you need, but over time, God may reveal to you that what you wanted wasn't exactly aligned with His best for you. We might ask for something in our limited understanding, but God sees the big picture. He knows what's truly good for us, and His delays often serve as a form of protection, ensuring that we don't rush into something that could hurt us or derail us from our purpose. Think about the story of David. As a young shepherd, he was anointed by God to be the next king of Israel. But even though the prophecy was clear, David did not immediately ascend to the throne. In fact, he went through years of hardship, running for his life from King Saul, living in caves and being surrounded by enemies. During those years, David was being prepared. He was learning to trust God in the midst of uncertainty. He was being tested in his faith, his patience, and his leadership. When the time came for David to step into the role of king, he was not only ready, but also equipped to lead with wisdom, strength, and humility. In the same way, the delays in your life are not signs that God is saying no to your dreams or desires. They are part of the process of preparing you for something greater. If God answered every prayer immediately or gave us everything we wanted right away, we might not be ready to handle the blessings He has in store for us. His delays are designed to strengthen us, deepen our faith, and build in us a greater reliance on Him. As you step into 2025, don't be discouraged by what seems like a delay. It's easy to get frustrated and question why things aren't happening the way we expect. But remember that God is working in ways you can't always see. Just because you haven't received your breakthrough yet doesn't mean it's not coming. His timing is perfect. And when the moment arrives, you will realize that the wait was worth it. God is never late. His timing is always right. Delays are simply a part of the process that leads to His perfect provision. So instead of seeing your delays as roadblocks, begin to see them as divine setups. Trust in His plan, remain faithful, and know that when the time is right, He will open the doors you've been waiting for. It's easy to want to avoid struggles, hardships, and challenges in life. We naturally desire peace, comfort, and happiness, and often, when we experience pain or difficulty, we wonder why God would allow such things to happen. But here's an important truth that may surprise you. Your struggles are not wasted. They are a critical part of your preparation for the greatness that lies ahead. God uses every hardship, every challenge, and every season of difficulty to shape you into the person He has called you to be. In Romans 5:4, it says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." This verse reveals a powerful truth. Struggles and challenges are not signs of God's abandonment, but tools He uses to build something greater in us. They create perseverance, strengthen our character, and give us a deeper sense of hope. This process doesn't always make sense in the moment, but it's essential for the growth and development that will enable us to walk into the promises of 2025. Think about the way muscles are built in the body. When you go to the gym and lift weights, your muscles are torn down in the process. It's painful, and it's not always pleasant, but those tears and stress on the muscles are what cause them to grow stronger. If you never faced resistance, you wouldn't grow in strength. The same principle applies to your spiritual, emotional, and mental growth. In life, the weights you lift, the hardships you endure, are what prepare you for the bigger challenges and blessings that God has waiting for you. Without those struggles, you wouldn't be able to handle the greatness He's getting ready to release in 2025. Look at the life of Jesus. He is the ultimate example of how God uses struggle to prepare for something greater. Jesus, the Son of God, faced rejection, betrayal, suffering, and ultimately death on the cross. None of these challenges were easy or pleasant, but through his suffering, he achieved the greatest victory ever, the salvation of the world. The struggles he faced were part of the divine preparation for the ultimate purpose for which he came. His preparation wasn't easy, but it led to his greatest triumph. In your own life, you may face moments where things feel unfair or overwhelming. You might question why you have to go through certain difficulties, especially when you see others seemingly getting by without the same struggles. But remember, God's preparation process isn't about comparison. It's about your unique journey. He knows exactly what you need to face in order to become the person you were created to be. You may be in a season right now where it feels like you're fighting a constant battle. Whether it's in your relationships, career, health, or spiritual walk, the pressure may feel too much to bear. But don't be discouraged. God is using that very pressure to mold you into a vessel that can carry the blessings He's preparing for you. The greater the pressure, the greater the strength and resilience that will be built within you. In James 1:4, we are told, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." This verse challenges us to see trials in a new light, not as obstacles to avoid, but as opportunities to grow. Through the struggles you face, God is making you complete, lacking nothing. Every trial has a purpose. In 2025, you will find that the things you once struggled with will no longer have the same hold over you. The lessons you've learned, the strength you've gained, and the resilience you have developed will enable you to walk confidently into the next season of your life. The struggles of today are preparing you for the victories of tomorrow. They are making you stronger, wiser, and more equipped to handle the blessings God has set aside for you. The refining process can be uncomfortable, but it's essential for your growth. Think of the process of refining gold. Gold is heated to extreme temperatures, and as it melts, impurities rise to the surface and are removed. This is how gold becomes pure and valuable. Similarly, your struggles are like the heat that refines you. Though it may be painful at times, God is purifying you, removing what is not necessary, and making you stronger and more capable for the plans He has for you in 2025. God never wastes a season. Every challenge you face is an essential step in your preparation. So instead of dreading the struggle, embrace it as part of the divine plan. Trust that God is using this time to build you up so that when the breakthroughs come, you will be more than ready to receive them. The preparation that happens through struggle is what allows you to stand firm when you walk into your purpose. It equips you with the perseverance and character needed to fulfill the bigger plans God has for you. Faith is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It is the bridge between where you are and where God wants to take you. In 2025, your faith will be the key that unlocks doors to new opportunities, new relationships, and the breakthroughs you've been praying for. When you step out in faith, you are opening yourself to the unimaginable. The Bible says in Mark 11:24, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours." This powerful verse reminds us that when we have faith in God, we are not just wishing for something to happen. We are expecting it, believing that it is already done. Faith has the power to change our entire perspective on life. When we walk in faith, we are no longer limited by what we see in the natural. Instead, we begin to see through the eyes of God. Eyes that see beyond our current circumstances, eyes that see the potential and the promise that He has placed before us. 2 Corinthians 5:7 tells us, "For we live by faith, not by sight." This is the essence of walking in God's will, choosing to trust in His word, His timing, and His ability to do what we cannot do ourselves. Think about the story of Abraham, one of the greatest examples of faith in the Bible. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, even though at the time he had no children. In fact, Abraham was well advanced in age and his wife Sarah was barren. On the surface, it seemed impossible for God's promise to come to pass. Yet Abraham did not focus on what was visible, he focused on the promise, and by faith believed that what God said would come true. Romans 4:20 says regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he had promised. Through Abraham's unwavering faith, God made a way where there seemed to be no way. In the same way, when you walk by faith in 2025, you will see God open doors and make a way where there seems to be no way. Faith also empowers you to step into what might seem impossible. God doesn't ask you to understand everything or figure it all out in advance. Instead, he asks you to trust him and take steps forward in faith, even when you can't see the entire path ahead. This is the essence of trusting God. Hebrews 11:01 defines faith as confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. It's not about what we can see with our eyes, but about having confidence that God is working on our behalf even when we can't see it. In 2025, you will face moments where God asks you to take steps that seem risky or unfamiliar. Maybe you'll feel prompted to start something new, to change careers, or to move in a direction that doesn't make logical sense. But it's in those moments that faith becomes the key to unlocking the next chapter of your life. When you step out in faith, you are positioning yourself for the doors of opportunity to swing wide open. Faith has the ability to open doors that fear would try to keep shut. When you trust God, he will lead you into places you've never imagined. Consider the story of the Israelites as they stood before the Red Sea. They were trapped with the enemy army behind them and the vast sea in front of them. It seemed like an impossible situation, but Moses, through faith, trusted that God would make a way. And in that moment, God instructed Moses to stretch out his staff and the Red Sea parted, providing a way for the Israelites to escape. If Moses had let fear control him instead of faith, they would have been trapped. But his faith in God's power unlocked the door to their freedom. Similarly, when you walk by faith in 2025, God will part the seas in your life, creating paths where you once saw none. Faith also unlocks doors in our spiritual lives. The more we trust in God, the more he can reveal himself to us. Faith draws us closer to God and positions us to hear his voice more clearly. In Matthew 17:20, Jesus says, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." This verse teaches us that faith doesn't have to be large, it just needs to be genuine. Even a small amount of faith, when placed in the hands of God, can move mountains and unlock the impossible. In 2025, expect God to challenge your faith. He will call you to trust him in new and sometimes uncomfortable ways. But every time you respond with faith, you are unlocking new levels of blessing, favor, and opportunity. The more you trust him, the more he will reveal his power and goodness in your life. As you step forward in faith, you will see doors open that will lead to the fulfillment of your dreams and the manifestation of God's promises. Faith is not just about believing, it's about stepping into the unknown with the assurance that God is right there with you, guiding you every step of the way. When you walk by faith, you position yourself to receive the unimaginable and experience the miraculous. One of the most incredible truths we can hold on to in our walk with God is that he is always working behind the scenes to shift things in our favor. Even when we cannot see it, even when we feel like we're stuck or things are not moving and positioning people to ensure that his plans for us come to pass. This divine shifting is a reminder that we are not alone in our struggles and that God's favor is always with us, moving us closer to his intended purpose for our lives. In Romans 8:28, we are reminded, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This verse teaches us that God is continually working on our behalf, even when we can't immediately see the evidence. Everything that happens in our lives, whether it appears good or bad, is part of a larger plan that is ultimately for our benefit. What may seem like a setback, a detour, or a frustration in the moment is, in reality, part of God's shifting process. He is moving things around, aligning circumstances and opening doors for your favor, even in the most unexpected ways. Consider the story of Esther in the Bible. At a time when the Jewish people were under threat of destruction, God strategically placed Esther in the king's palace in a position of influence. She had no idea how God was positioning her for a moment of destiny. But when the time came, God used her position to save her people, and she became a living example of how God shifts things in our favor when we remain faithful and trust His timing. What looked like a random situation was in fact a divine setup orchestrated by God to bring about His favor and deliverance for an entire nation. In the same way, God is working behind the scenes in your life. You may not always see the shifts, and it may not feel like things are changing, but God is positioning people, events, and circumstances that will align perfectly at the right moment. There are doors that you thought were closed that God is about to open. There are relationships that are being formed right now, even without your knowledge, that will be vital to your future success. Sometimes this shifting can feel uncomfortable. It may involve changes that we don't understand or that challenge our comfort zone. But rest assured, these shifts are not meant to harm you. They are meant to position you for greater blessings. When God shifts things in your favor, it often requires us to move out of our own plans and step into His. God may be moving you out of your current situation to take you into a new season of favor, promotion, and purpose. It may involve change, discomfort, and stepping out into the unknown. But these shifts are what make room for God's best in your life. Take the example of Joseph again. Joseph experienced betrayal, rejection, and hardship, but all of those experiences were part of God's shifting plan. He went from being a slave to becoming the second most powerful man in Egypt. Joseph's journey was not easy, but each step, each hardship, and each disappointment led to a shift that positioned him for God's favor. His time in prison, his betrayal by his brothers, all of those events were working together to shift things into place so that he could ultimately fulfill his purpose. When Joseph finally understood the divine purpose behind his struggles, he said to his brothers in Genesis 50:20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." This was a moment of clarity where Joseph recognized that the shifts in his life were all leading to God's favor and greater purpose. In your life, 2025 may be the year when you see these shifts more clearly. You may experience moments of divine reordering where things suddenly align in ways you never expected. You may find yourself in new opportunities, surrounded by new people, or stepping into new positions that seem too big for you. But they are part of God's plan to shift you into favor. What you thought was a delay or a detour will suddenly make sense as you look back and realize that God was positioning you for something far greater than you could have imagined. God's shifting often involves timing that may feel uncomfortable or uncertain. It's easy to question when things aren't moving fast enough or when we're waiting for our breakthrough. But remember, God's timing is always perfect. He will not allow anything to happen prematurely. When the time is right, He will make the shift and you will look back with gratitude knowing that everything that happened was part of His divine plan. This year, God is moving in your life, shifting things that are necessary for your future. Even when you don't understand the process, trust that He is moving in ways that will benefit you. Even when things feel stagnant or stuck, trust that God is preparing you for something big. God is not only preparing the blessing, He is also preparing you to handle it. The shift that's happening in your life is positioning you for a season of favor, abundance, an opportunity that is beyond your current expectations. So stay faithful and keep your eyes open for the shifts that will bring you closer to the future God has promised you. There are seasons in life where it seems like nothing is happening, where you feel as if you've been waiting forever for a breakthrough. You've prayed, worked hard, and stayed faithful, but the answers haven't come yet. However, it is often in these moments of waiting when we least expect it, that a breakthrough is right around the corner. In 2025, you may find that you are closer to your breakthrough than ever before. And everything you've been through has been preparing you for this moment. God is about to open doors, pour out blessings, and bring about the change you've been longing for. The Bible is full of stories where breakthrough came after a period of waiting, perseverance, and trusting God. One powerful example is the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. For 40 years, they wandered in the desert waiting for the promised land. During this time, they faced many trials, struggles, and hardships. But when the time was right, God led them across the Jordan River and into the land He had promised them. What seemed like an endless season of struggle was actually a time of preparation for the breakthrough that was about to come. They were on the verge of the promised land, and when they crossed over, they entered a season of abundance and victory. In Galatians 6:9, we are reminded to not grow weary in doing good. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. This verse encourages us that even when it feels like our efforts are going unnoticed, or that the harvest is taking forever to arrive, a breakthrough is coming. The key is perseverance, continuing to do what's right, to trust, and to believe that God is faithful to His promises. It's in those final moments of waiting that our breakthrough is often just around the corner. Think about the story of the woman with the issue of blood in Mark 5. She had been suffering for 12 long years with no healing in sight. She spent all her money on doctors and nothing worked. She was desperate, but one moment of faith changed everything. She believed that if she could just touch Jesus' cloak, she would be healed. And when she did, she was immediately healed. That moment of faith brought about her breakthrough after years of waiting and suffering. For you, 2025 may be the year that your moment of breakthrough arrives. What you've been praying for, what you've been trusting for, may finally come to pass. The effort, the faith, and the persistence you've shown in times of struggle are about to be rewarded. Even if it feels like everything has been delayed or nothing is working in your favor, remember that God is never late. He is always on time. And when the breakthrough comes, it will be better than you imagined. Breakthrough is not always an instant or immediate change. It's a shift that takes place after a period of preparation and growth. Sometimes we have to go through the fire in order to be refined and ready to handle the blessings that are coming our way. Just like gold, which must be heated to a high temperature to remove the impurities. Your life and your faith may have undergone a refining process. But when God brings the breakthrough, you will be purified and you'll be ready to receive what He has prepared for you. Think about the story of David. Before he became king, he was a young shepherd in the fields, overlooked by his family and society. But in God's perfect timing, David was anointed as king. He faced many challenges, including running for his life from King Saul, but all of those experiences prepared him for the responsibility of the throne. When the moment of his breakthrough came, he was ready to step into the role of leadership. What seemed like years of struggle and uncertainty was actually a period of preparation for the great things God had in store for him. In the same way, your breakthrough is not just a sudden change, it's the culmination of everything you've gone through. Your struggles, your lessons, and your endurance have all been preparing you for this very moment. There may be times when you feel like giving up or when you doubt whether the breakthrough will ever come, but God is saying to you, you are on the verge of something great. Sometimes breakthroughs don't come in the way we expect them to. They may not always be big, dramatic changes, but breakthroughs can also come in small, subtle ways, through new opportunities, relationships, or shifts in perspective. In Corinthians 4:17 it says, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." Even though the process may feel long or difficult, God is using every moment to prepare you for a glory and breakthrough that is greater than you can imagine. As you step into 2025, hold on to the hope that your breakthrough is imminent. You might be in the final moments of your waiting period, and all that you've been through is about to come together in a powerful way. Keep your faith strong, keep pressing forward, and know that God is faithful to deliver on His promises. The breakthrough you've been waiting for is not far off. It's right around the corner, and when it arrives, it will change everything. In our journey through life, we often encounter people who come into our path at just the right moment, sometimes as mentors, sometimes as friends, and other times as divine connections that we didn't even expect. One of the incredible ways that God works in our lives is by aligning the right people at the right time to help us move forward into the next phase of our purpose. Whether it's through a kind word, a timely opportunity, or guidance in times of uncertainty, God is always orchestrating relationships that will help propel us into His will for our lives. As we step into 2025, be aware that God is actively working behind the scenes to align the right people to assist you, support you, and help you fulfill your God-given purpose. When we look at the life of Ruth, we see how God works in this way. Ruth's story is one of divine alignment, from her loyalty to her mother-in-law, Naomi, to her eventual meeting with Boaz. Ruth was not initially in the position she needed to be to experience God's blessing. She was a widow living in a foreign land with little hope of a future. But when she chose to stay faithful to Naomi, God led her to Boaz, a man who would not only provide for her physical needs, but would also be part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. God strategically placed Ruth in Boaz's field, and through Boaz's generosity and willingness to help, Ruth's life was completely transformed. God aligned people at just the right time to fulfill His purpose in Ruth's life. Similarly, God is aligning people for you in 2025. You may not yet see it, but just as He brought the right people into Ruth's life at the right time, He is arranging relationships in your own life that will bring blessings, open doors, and help you achieve your dreams. These divine connections may come in the form of mentors who will guide you, people who will open doors for you, or even friends who will walk beside you in your journey. You may not even know that these people are about to enter your life, but trust that God is already positioning them to play a crucial role in your future. In Proverbs 3:05-6, we are encouraged to trust in the Lord with all our heart and not lean on our own understanding. It says, "In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." When we trust in God's plan, He aligns not only our steps, but also the people we need in our lives to help us along the way. The right people will be placed in your path at exactly the right time, and their influence will have a lasting impact on your journey. Consider the story of Elijah and Elisha. When God called Elijah to be His prophet, Elijah was given a servant in Elisha who would carry on his mission. At a critical point in their journey, when Elijah was about to be taken to heaven, he passed on his mantle to Elisha, who then performed even greater miracles. The two men were divinely aligned for a purpose that stretched beyond their individual lives. Without Elisha, Elijah's work would not have continued in the same way. And without Elijah, Elisha would not have been equipped to carry the mantle. God aligned these two prophets at just the right time for a powerful, continuing legacy. In the same way, God will bring the right people into your life to help you accomplish His will. These relationships will not always be ones you expected or even ones you initially planned for. But God knows exactly who you need and when you need them. Whether it's a business partner who shares your vision, a mentor who provides wisdom, or a friend who encourages you, these connections are a reflection of God's faithfulness in helping you succeed. Sometimes it's easy to feel like we're alone in our journey, especially when we face challenges or setbacks. But remember, God has a way of sending help when we need it most. Just as God sent Moses' brother Aaron to speak on his behalf when Moses felt inadequate to lead, He will send people into your life who will help carry the load, support you, and encourage you along the way. You don't have to do everything by yourself. God has already arranged the right people to walk with you, and they will arrive at the right moment. Additionally, these people may not always come with all the answers or solutions right away. Sometimes God's alignment involves a process, and the people He places in your life are meant to challenge you, stretch you, and help you grow. Their role may not always be immediately clear, but as you reflect on the journey, you'll begin to see how God used them to shape your future. Just as God used Naomi to guide Ruth into her destiny, the people He is aligning for you may be part of a greater plan that you can only see in hindsight. In Isaiah 55:8-9, God reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We may not always understand how or why certain people come into our lives, but trust that God's plans are always greater than our own. Every relationship, whether it's a friend, a mentor, or even a seemingly random connection, is part of His divine design for your life. These people are being positioned to help you fulfill the call on your life and walk into the purpose He has set before you. In 2025, stay open to the divine alignments that are taking place in your life. The people who will play significant roles in your journey are already being prepared, and when the time is right, they will come alongside you to help guide you, support you, and open the doors that lead to your breakthrough. Trust that God is moving in your relationships and that every connection has a purpose. You are not on this journey alone. God is surrounding you with the right people at the right time to help you achieve everything He has called you to. One of the most challenging aspects of the Christian walk can be the seasons of waiting. It can feel like time is slipping away, like you are stuck in a holding pattern with no progress, no answers, and no movement in sight. But the truth is, your season of waiting is never wasted. In fact, it is one of the most crucial periods in your spiritual and personal growth. It is during these times that God prepares you, refines you, and positions you for the breakthrough that's just ahead. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. Far from it. In the Bible, many great leaders and men and women of faith experienced long periods of waiting before their moment of breakthrough. Abraham waited for 25 years for the promise of a child to be fulfilled. Joseph waited in prison for many years before his destiny as ruler of Egypt came to pass. David was anointed king as a young man, but he spent many years running for his life, learning humility and leadership before he actually took the throne. These waiting seasons weren't wasted. They were times of preparation, training, and refining. In Isaiah 40:31, we are reminded, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." This verse tells us that waiting on God is not a passive experience. It is an active trust in Him that renews our strength and prepares us for the journey ahead. In the waiting, God is equipping us with everything we need for the next season. It's in the silence, the stillness, and the apparent inactivity that God is doing some of His deepest work within us. Waiting on God doesn't mean sitting idle. It means actively seeking His will, trusting in His timing, and allowing Him to do a deep work within our hearts. Psalm 27:14 encourages us, "Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." This waiting period is not one of frustration, but of strength. It's about learning to rely on God's strength rather than our own. Waiting teaches us patience, humility, and trust in God's timing. In our fast-pacing world, it can be easy to feel like we need everything right now. But God's timing is perfect, and the waiting season helps us align ourselves with His perfect plan. While the world around us is rushing to get things done, God is taking His time with us, shaping us and making us into the people He has called us to be. Consider the example of Moses. He spent 40 years in the wilderness, away from Egypt after fleeing from Pharaoh. This was a time of waiting, of learning to lead and trust God, even though he did not understand the purpose of this season. It was in that time that Moses developed the patience and leadership skills necessary to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. If Moses had not spent that time in the wilderness, he would not have been equipped for the monumental task ahead of him. God was preparing him during the waiting period, and when the time came, Moses was ready. In the same way, your season of waiting is not wasted. God is preparing you for something far greater than you can see right now. This waiting is an opportunity for you to grow deeper in your relationship with Him, to trust Him more fully, and to develop the qualities that will enable you to handle the blessings He is preparing for you. Your waiting is not in vain. It's in this season that you learn to rely on God, to hear His voice more clearly, and to develop a character that can carry the weight of your calling. James 1:2 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Waiting tests our faith and builds perseverance. It's often in the hardest times that we develop the strongest faith. While it may seem difficult in the moment, these tests help refine us and shape us into who God wants us to be. The waiting period is like a crucible, refining us like gold, making us stronger, more resilient, and better prepared for what lies ahead. Sometimes the waiting season can feel like it's taking too long, or that the promise is never going to come. But we must remember that God works on His own timeline, and His plans are always greater than our own. 2 Peter 3:9 reminds us that the Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. God's timing is perfect, and the waiting season is part of His divine purpose. It's not about what we want right now. It's about what He wants to do in us before He releases His promise. During your waiting, remember that God is not just concerned with the destination. He is concerned with the process. He cares about who you are becoming as you wait. Are you growing in patience? Are you learning to trust Him? Are you becoming more like Christ in the waiting? These questions are essential to understanding that the waiting season is not a passive time, but a time of active spiritual growth. Look at the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel 1. Hannah waited many years for a child, enduring ridicule and deep pain, but in her waiting, God was developing in her a deeper faith, humility, and desire for His will above her own. Eventually, God answered her prayer and gave her the son she so longed for. Samuel, who would later be one of the greatest prophets in Israel's history. Hannah's waiting was not wasted. It was a time of preparation for both her and her son's destiny. As you wait in 2025, remember that this season is not a delay, but a divine setup. God is doing a deep work in you, preparing you for what's ahead. While it may feel like nothing is happening, be assured that God is working behind the scenes, aligning people, circumstances, and events to bring His perfect plan to fruition in your life. Your season of waiting is not wasted. It is your time of preparation, growth, and trust in the goodness and timing of God. When the waiting is over, you will be ready to step into the next chapter with faith, strength, and the confidence that you have been equipped for everything that lies ahead. One of the most powerful truths we can hold on to as we move through life is the understanding that God's timing is always perfect. As human beings, we tend to operate on our own time frames. We have deadlines, schedules, and expectations of when things should happen in our lives. Yet God's timing often looks different from ours. He sees the bigger picture, and He is never in a hurry. His timing is always intentional, perfectly designed to bring about His will for us at exactly the right moment. In 2025, as you look forward to the future and anticipate the big things God has for you, remember that His timing will always align with His greater purposes for your life. In Ecclesiastes 3:01, we are reminded that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. God has a purpose for every season in our lives, and He knows exactly when each season should begin and end. While we may feel anxious or frustrated when things don't happen on our timeline, we can rest assured that God is orchestrating everything according to His divine plan. His perfect timing will lead to the greatest good in our lives, even when it feels like we've been waiting forever for something to happen. When we look at the life of Jesus, we see that even He operated in perfect timing. In John 7:6, when His brothers urged Him to go to Judea for the Feast of Tabernacles, Jesus responded, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always ready." Jesus knew that His actions and decisions were tied to the Father's will and timing. He did not rush ahead of God's plan, even when others around Him may have wanted Him to. He understood that His ministry and purpose had to unfold according to the Father's will and perfect timing. Just as Jesus trusted God's timing, we too must trust that the events and outcomes in our lives will happen in God's perfect time. There may be seasons where it feels like things are delayed, and we may even question why God is waiting so long to answer our prayers. But we must remember that God is never late. Isaiah 55:9 tells us, As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. God's ways are so much greater than ours. He knows what we need before we even ask, and He is perfectly able to bring everything into place at just the right time. One of the most profound examples of God's perfect timing is seen in the story of Esther. Esther, a young Jewish woman, found herself in the Persian king's palace as queen. At first, it seemed like an incredible opportunity, but soon she learned of a plot to destroy her people. The timing of Esther's rise to power was no accident. God had positioned her in that place at that specific time for such a time as this. Esther 4:14. Her courage to act in that moment brought about the deliverance of the Jewish people. Had Esther not been in the right place at the right time, the outcome could have been vastly different. God's timing was not just a coincidence. It was part of His divine plan to save a nation. In your own life, God is placing you where you need to be at exactly the right time. There may be moments where it feels like things aren't progressing as you expected, but trust that God is orchestrating your life with precision. He is preparing the right opportunities, people, and circumstances at the right time to bring about His plan for you. Your dreams, desires, and prayers are not forgotten. They are just being perfectly aligned according to His will. Another incredible example of God's timing is seen in the life of Abraham and the promise of a son. When God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, Abraham was already very old and his wife Sarah was past childbearing age. Yet God promised that Abraham would have a son. In Genesis 17:21, God says, "But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year." At the time this seemed impossible, but God's timing was flawless. When it seemed impossible in human terms, God delivered the promise at the appointed time. Abraham and Sarah's faith were tested, but when the time came, God brought His promise to fruition. This is a powerful reminder that God's timing is not bound by human limitations. What may seem impossible to us is entirely possible for God. The promise He has given you, the dreams He's placed in your heart, and the goals you've set may seem out of reach, but God's timing will never fail. What He has spoken over your life will come to pass at the right time. Romans 4:20 tells us that Abraham did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what He had promised. We also see God's perfect timing in the story of Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers and spent years in prison, seemingly forgotten and forsaken. But God had a plan, and in Genesis 41:14, when the time was right, Joseph was called from prison to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. His interpretation not only saved Egypt from famine, but it also elevated Joseph to a position of power, fulfilling the dreams he had received as a young man. Joseph's journey was filled with hardship, but it was all part of God's timing, preparing him for a destiny that was bigger than he could have ever imagined. Similarly, your life's timing is unfolding in ways you may not yet fully understand, but trust that God is positioning you for greatness. His timing may involve seasons of waiting, preparation, or even hardship, but He is never idle. Everything that happens in your life is part of His perfect plan to bring about His purposes at just the right time. Trusting in His timing means surrendering to His will, even when we don't see the full picture. In Psalm 31:15, the psalmist declares, "My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies, from those who pursue me." This verse is a powerful reminder that our times are not our own. They are in God's hands. He controls the seasons of our lives and has a perfect plan for every moment. No matter where you find yourself today, whether in a waiting season, a season of growth, or a season of breakthrough, know that God is in control and His timing will bring about His perfect will for your life. As you step into 2025, take heart and remember that God is always on time. Even when things don't seem to be moving as quickly as you'd like, trust that His timing is flawless. His delays are not denials, and His plans for you will unfold in the perfect moment. Your breakthrough, your answer, your opportunity is on the way, and when it comes, it will be at the right time. Trust in His timing, for it will always be worth the wait. As we look forward to 2025, we can stand firm in the knowledge that God is working on our behalf. His preparation for us is already underway, and even when we can't see it, He is orchestrating everything perfectly in His time. Whether it's aligning people to help us, preparing us during times of waiting, or ensuring that we are positioned for the breakthroughs ahead, God's plan is always intentional. His timing, His purpose, and His power will carry us through every season and lead us into the incredible future He has for us. As you move through the coming year, remember that God is preparing something big for you. Even when the path seems unclear or when challenges rise, trust that He is guiding you step by step, and His plans will come to fruition in His perfect timing. Let your faith in His promises fuel your hope, and hold on to the truth that God's timing is never wrong, it is always right. Keep your heart open, stay faithful, and be ready to step into the amazing things God has for you in 2025. His hand is on your life, and He is about to do something extraordinary in and through you. So step forward in confidence, knowing that the best is yet to come.